Hey guys, this is Mrs. Hahn, and today I'm going to talk to you about the Toulmin model. And the Toulmin model is a way of building a powerful argument, and it has specific steps that you need to use to form an argument. Take a second and look at this comic right here on the screen. So the comic says, don't raise your voice, improve your argument. Think about all the times you've gotten into a heated argument with a friend, a family member, and you've said, your argument's so stupid, why can't you see it the way I see it? Whenever you say, you're so dumb, your argument makes no sense, that never ever changes someone's mind. It just doesn't. It's not an effective way to win an argument, even if it's true. So the Toulmin model, which is named after the man that created these steps of making an argument, he basically built pieces of an argument or a model of building a strong argument. And if you have all of those pieces, you have a powerful argument that is much more likely to truly persuade or convince someone than if you just get into a screaming match with someone. So these are the pieces of the Toulmin model. Let's take a look. Okay. So the first step of the Toulmin model is just addressing the topic. And typically we talk about this in the form of a question. Not always, but typically. So for example, the argument might be, should we ban smoking inside of restaurants? Well, typically now, every restaurant will ban smoking, but that wasn't the case when I was a kid. You would go into a restaurant and they would have a smoking section and a non-smoking section. And when people started banning smoking, it was so controversial. Like, people got really upset about it. Like, I want to be able to smoke inside a restaurant. It's my right. I'm staying away from you. If you want to be in the non-smoking section, go for it, but it's my right to smoke. So it was a really big controversial thing for a long time. So the topic would be that question. Should smoking be banned inside of a restaurant? So the claim would be your argument or your side that you're taking on that topic. So taking a side, stating it clearly, like in one sentence. Yes, it should be banned. No, it should not be banned. Evidence. So this is where we should be looking at things from research, things from experts that will prove our claim, like direct quotes, statistics, or studies. Maybe even court cases in some examples. After your evidence, then you need the warrant. That's basically a fancy word for the reasoning, and this should be the longest section of your argument, whether it's an argument you're speaking or an argument you're writing. So the general hypothetical, and logical statements that serve as kind of a bridge between your claim and your evidence. So this is where you explain how your evidence proves your claim. If my claim is that we should not allow smoking inside restaurants, and my evidence is about how secondhand smoking affects everyone's lungs and not just the lungs of the smoker, then my explanation, my warrant, my reasoning is going to bridge that claim to that evidence and show how they're connected to one another. Next, we have our backing. And our backing is just, think of like an extra support, an extra reason. So it's an additional support or reason that will back it up. So think of like my evidence is my main reason and my backing is like my secondary reason. So I start with my strongest evidence and then I back it up with my second piece of evidence that isn't as strong as my first piece. Then we have the counterclaim. The counterclaim is super important because if you are going to make an argument, but you don't even know what the other side believes, then you haven't really done your homework. So the counterclaim is when we acknowledge the opposing side's argument. So that actually shows like, I know what you believe. I've researched the other side. I've thought about all the positions, and I still believe that my side is true. So it's acknowledging that you've done your homework, that you know what both sides of the argument believe, and that you've still chosen yours. And then lastly, we have our rebuttal. We don't just end our argument by saying, I believe this, but so-and-so believes this. Well, no, you can't end with the opposing argument. You have to respond to it. So that rebuttal is where you address that counterclaim. So if I think smoking should be banned inside of restaurants, here's a few statistics about why. Then I give you an explanation. Then I give you a secondary reason why. And then, so like my first evidence might be like statistics about how secondhand smoke affects my lungs. My backing might just be a secondary reason. Like, I just don't think it's enjoyable for me to smell smoke while I eat. And then the counterclaim might be, well, those people over there, they believe that they should have a right if they sit in their own area to smoke, and that's their right as adults to do that. It's their body. They can do what they want. They should be able to live their life in the way that they choose. That's the counterclaim. Well, I can't just leave it there. I need to respond to that. So that's where the rebuttal comes in, where I address the counterclaim. So I'll say, well, so-and-so believes it is their right to live the way they want and to practice these behaviors, but I feel that my position is still correct, and I feel that they're wrong because of this. It's okay to even do what we call a concession, or make what we call a concession, and say, hey, they make a valid point. This is important, but In this case, I feel that, and then you still address why you think they're wrong or they're invalid, or maybe say they're valid, but overall my position is still stronger or more logical. Let's just look at an actual example. So here's a topic. Do schools have the right to discipline objectionable technology, use off of school grounds or after school hours? So let's say, for example, pirated videos. This has been a big issue with a lot of my students. They'll download videos, let's say like the most recent Disney video, and they don't have a Disney Plus account, and they didn't buy it on Amazon, and they just downloaded it on a free website. So they didn't pay for it. But I find out they're watching that video, and it's an illegally downloaded video, and they're watching it on a school Chromebook that they did not buy. But they did it at like 7 p.m. and they were at home. I just heard them talking about it. They weren't doing it. They weren't even doing it in the school building. So the question is, should I as a teacher or should the school have the right to discipline someone for using their Chromebook inappropriately when they're not at school and when it's not during school hours? So that would be the topic. So let's think about the claim. I'm going to say no. Schools do not have the right to discipline students for these infractions, which is a fancy word for violations. No, they don't. Well, I got to back it up. I need evidence. Here's a piece of evidence. Courts have not supported schools in their attempts to discipline students, citing the First and Fourth Amendments. So I might now go into some specific examples and explain those examples. Warrant. Here's my reasoning. The First Amendment gives American citizens the right to free speech, and the Fourth Amendment protects citizens from what we call unreasonable searches and seizures. Therefore, after-school hours and off-campus student speech should be protected from the eyes and the ears of school administration. I might continue to explain that by saying an unreasonable search and seizure means if a student is on their Chromebook at 7 p.m., the school should not be allowed to search their history or look at what they're doing. That's an unreasonable search and seizure. A reasonable search and seizure might be like, ooh, I found out that student might harm themselves. I heard that they might want to do something dangerous to themselves or just another person. Well, then reasonably I can search their computer because I'm worried for their life or the life of someone else. But an unreasonable search and seizure means I don't have a reason as a teacher or as an administrator to search their property. Therefore, I'm making the argument that violates their rights of free speech and an unreasonable search and seizure. It's not my business if they are, looking at a video illegally on their Chromebook because they're not at school and it's at 7 or 8 p.m. Okay, so after my warrant, I need backing. I need like a secondary reason, an additional reason to back up the first reason. So here's an example. So the school's responsibility it's to teach students how to use their device appropriately and model them as an educational tool. But it is not their responsibility to police every action that kids have or to spy on kids. Now, I need to address the counterclaim. So who might disagree with me and why? Here's the counterclaim. Some people might say that students bring these issues that happen off campus back into the building, like maybe in the form of bullying or gossip that's taking place on social media, and they bring it back to the building. They're arguing about it in the building, even if it happened outside of school. Also, maybe I could say, students are on a device that they didn't pay for, so technically the school owns that device, so shouldn't they have a right to make sure that device is being used appropriately? But now I need to have a rebuttal. So I've addressed what other people think. Now I need to respond to that. Why do I still feel like my claim is true? Instead of disciplinary issues, perhaps if I realize a student is using a device inappropriately, it becomes a counseling issue. Maybe they need to talk to a counselor instead of being put in detention or having their device taken away. So that's a really quick preview. I'm going to do one more and just quickly read through it just to give you another example. Okay, I'm going to go through all of the steps: topic, claim, evidence, warrant, backing, counterclaim, and rebuttal. So topic: should secondary and elementary school students exchange school start time? So right now, elementary students go to school later, and middle school and high school students, they go really early. Should they switch? Here's my claim. Yes, it would be beneficial for both groups of students to switch school start times. Now I'm going to give you my evidence. Studies show that student achievement increases under this model. Teenagers generally perform better academically with a later start time. Now I need to explain my reasoning. Okay, I need to explain my evidence and connect it to the claim. This switch would better correspond to age-appropriate sleep patterns. So like little kids, they typically wake up earlier and they have a whole bunch of energy for an earlier start time for school. Adolescents, teenagers, they need an average of 8 to 10 hours of sleep, according to the sleepfoundation.org, and they would benefit from sleeping later in the morning, especially because their homework and extracurriculars often keep them up late. Let's go to the backing, a secondary reason. Okay, not my primary, but it's still an additional reason to support. A later start time, it coincides with evening responsibilities for the older students, right? Little kids go to bed early. Older kids stay up later. So later start time, they stay up later in the evening. They tend to go to bed later, so getting out of school later in the afternoon isn't that big of a problem, whereas it would be for little kids. Counterclaim. I need to talk about who disagrees with me and why. Some people may argue that the switch is not better for family schedules. If adolescents or teenagers, if they get home later, a lot of working parents with young children won't have anyone to get their kids off the bus, their little kids off the bus, and you can't leave tiny little kids at home without a babysitter, right? But here's my rebuttal. Here's how I'm going to address that. I hear you. It's a valid point, but the academic benefits would outweigh all those minor shifts in family schedules. So yes, that's a problem, but over time, families would figure out a solution. Families would figure out how to, hire someone to help their kids get off the bus, or maybe take turns. I'll get your kid and my kid at the same time. So the academic benefits really outweigh the small scheduling conflicts, and parents would find a solution to that. All right, I hope that going through those example arguments helps you understand the Toulmin model and all of the pieces, and how instead of just arguing back and forth, I show you the logical progression of here's my evidence, here's my explanation of why that evidence shows that my claim is true, here's my second claim, here's what other people believe, and here's why I still think my argument is better. And that is the basic Toulmin model. Hopefully that helps you understand it as you begin to practice that in your learning.